Welcome to Criminologist. Today, we're diving into one of the most chilling and heartbreaking true crime cases in American history, known as the Girl Scout murders of 1977. It was summer 1977, and camp season was about to begin for children across the United States. Camp Scott, located in northeastern Oklahoma in Mayes County, had been a retreat for Girl Scouts since 1928. Its 410 wooded acres could accommodate 140 campers and 30 staff. The Cookie Trail Road led to 10 camping units scattered throughout the green beauty. In April of 1977, just 2 months before the camp was to be started, a summer camp counselor attending a group training session discovered that an unknown person had broken into her cabin, gone through her personal belongings. Strangely enough, the only thing missing was all her donuts out of their box. In their place was a hastily scrawled note that read, in part, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls in Tent 1. A fake body was also found hanging on the property. This incident and the accompanying note was disregarded, as the message also made mention of Martians, and therefore the whole affair was seen as a prank. The management at Camp Scott made a decision many later called foolish when they failed to disclose the so-called prank to parents of the children slated to attend the upcoming summer sessions. Tent 1 stayed within the tent rotation and was assigned per the usual procedure. On Sunday, June 12, 1977, 3 young girls, Lori Lee Farmer, 8, Michelle Heather Guse, 9, and Doris Denise Milner, 10, bounded joyfully onto the bus that would take them along with 140 other campers to Camp Scott. The large group of preteen campers were set to spend a fun and eventful 2 weeks at the camp, but for 3 random girls, their trip would be tragically cut short. Upon arrival, the girls were all assigned campsites and tents. The camp was split into 10 different units, within which there were around 7 tents for campers and a counselor's tent. Each campsite had a Native American tribe's name, and Lori, Doris, and Michelle were assigned the Kiowa campsite, Tent 8. There were 27 Girl Scouts in Kiowa unit, and they were split into 7 different tents. Tent 8 was located on the edge of the campsite and geographically farthest from the camp counselor's tent, which was some 150 yards away and hidden behind the forest's mass of trees and foliage. The trio was actually supposed to be a quartet, as a 4th girl was also set to be in Tent 8, but due to a clerical error, has been misassigned. The unnamed 4th girl was meant to be moved to Tent 8 that same night, but due to an impending thunderstorm, the camp counselors decided to postpone the move, thus unknowingly saving that girl's life. At 7 p.m. the night of June 12th, the storm was in full force, but the girls were warm and happy, acquainting themselves over dinner in the dining tent. After eating, they, along with the rest of the brood, walked to their tents to retire for the night. That night, after returning to their tent from dinner, the girls wrote letters to their families at home. 9-year-old Michelle writes, "Dear Aunt Karen, how are you? I am fine. I am writing from camp. We can't go outside because it's storming. Me and my tent mates are in the last tent in our unit. My tent mates are Denise Milner and Lori Farmer. My room is shades of purple. Love, Michelle." Lori writes to her family in part, "We're just getting ready to go to bed. It is 7:45. I can't wait to write. We're all writing letters now because there's nothing else to do." It is perhaps Denise's letter that seems the most haunting, as she was already uneasy about her 2-week stay. "I don't like camp. It is awful. Mom, I don't want to stay at camp for 2 weeks. I want to come home and see Cassie and everybody." These letters would be the last written words of these precious and innocent girls. Carla Wilhite, a university student working at the camp, later testified that around 1:30 a.m. in the early morning of June 13th, she heard what she described as guttural, moaning sounds at cross-sections of trails leading towards the showers. She swept her flashlight across the campsite as the noise started up again, but seeing nothing out of the usual, returned to her tent without altering any others. She later explained that they assumed it was an animal and made the choice to not tell her co-workers because she thought they would be annoyed at having to walk through the cold, damp, dark forest and would think she was not up to the job of being a camp counselor. This choice, she says, would haunt her for the rest of her life. Others at the campsite that night later reported seeing a flashlight bobbing through the woods and also recalled hearing moaning or groaning sounds. At around 2 a.m., a girl in Tent 7 recalls the tent flap opening and a figure with a flashlight standing in the entryway. The girl was one of 4 campers in that tent and the only one awake at the time. She watched silently as the figure regarded the group for a second before closing the tent flap and walking off. The camper was confused and simply went back to sleep without alerting anyone. Between 2:30 and 3 a.m., a nearby landowner later reported hearing a great deal of automobile traffic on his remote road near the camp. At 3 a.m., a girl in a neighboring campsite, Cherokee Camp, heard a scream. She recalls looking at her watch and waking another girl. They listened for more noises, and upon hearing none, went back to sleep. At roughly the same time, another girl from another campsite says she heard screams and someone crying, "Mama, Mama." She, unsure of what to do, did nothing and went back to sleep. Michelle's father, heartbreaking, recalls how she individually hugged everyone for an extra long time before going off to camp and reminded her mother to water her African violets. Later, when he went back to the campsite to help search for evidence, he found a scrap of paper on which he recognized Michelle's handwriting. The paper simply said, "Dear Mama and Daddy." At 6 a.m. the next morning, Carla Wilhite, the same camp counselor who had heard the strange sounds in the night, was jogging the path towards the same cross-section of trails that lead to the camp's showers, the location of the strange noises she had heard the night before. Under some trees, she spotted 3 sleeping bags. Thinking it was leftover luggage from the new campers dropped off the day prior, she began to make her way towards it. Then she saw a body. It was the 10-year-old body of Doris Milner. Her screams first alerted the other camp counselors to the gruesome scene, and quickly a crowd gathered. Upon seeing Doris, dead, beaten, bound, and partially nude, the counselors were too fearful to open the 2 closed sleeping bags, and police didn't realize there were 3 victims until authorities arrived on scene, and a coroner opened the 2 zipped sleeping bags. Authorities would testify that the other 2 girls, Lori and Michelle, were both bound with elastic bands in their respective sleeping bags, in fetal positions and wrapped in bloodied bed sheets. Both had died of blunt force trauma to the back of the head, seemingly while still sleeping inside the tent. Doris, however, detectives surmised, had been lead away from the tent, still alive. Evidence showed Doris was sexually assaulted and beaten so hard in the face that indentations of the weapon remained as post-mortem artifacts, although her cause of death is listed as strangulation. There was blood on the floor of the tent, indicating the girls had initially been attacked inside and then carried outside. Evidence found on scene was a large flashlight, red in color, with a single fingerprint on the lens that, while able to be dusted, imaged, and scanned, never returned any matches in any state or federal databases. A footprint left in the pool of blood in the tent was also found, made by a male size 9.5 shoe. Along with these items, there was rope, duct tape, and a long black hair. Authorities began their tedious and emotionally charged investigation surrounding the camp with emergency vehicles. Parents were informed that something had gone wrong and that they would have to pick up their children at the council building. Parents of all 140 campers rightfully panicked and drove to the camp, creating a literal mile-long line of cars back up into the entrance road, known as Cookie Trail, so named for the Girl Scouts' most famous annual endeavor. Frantic parents were turned away and forced to wait for hours in the sun as the camp was put on lockdown. Terrified parents who saw the emergency vehicles and heard rumors were not told of their campers' status. The rest of the Girl Scouts were not told that 3 of their campmates were dead. They were taken to participate in activities away from the campsite until the buses arrived to take them back to Magic Empire Council in Tulsa. The camp was eventually evacuated, and campers relaxed to their parents or guardians, some released without even their luggage, and all confused at the purpose of their trip being cut short. June 13th would be the last day Camp Scott operated. The camp would close for good. The investigation went into full swing once the camp was cleared out. The following day, June 14th, detectives noted that it appeared the murderer had attempted to clean up the blood and smeared it around. There was blood not only on the floor, but also on towels and the mattresses. The investigators soon learned about Jack Schroff, who owned a ranch near Camp Scott. At his home, black duct tape was found, as well as rope, which appeared identical to that which had been used to bind the wrists of 2 of the girls. However, Schroff claimed that his house had been broken into prior to the attack. Some items had been stolen from his cabin, but he couldn't name exactly what had been taken. Schroff took a polygraph and passed. He also had a solid alibi for the night of the murders and therefore was cleared as a suspect. Authorities then came up with a new suspect named Gene Leroy Hart. Gene Leroy Hart was a local Cherokee man, raised just 1 mile from Camp Scott, who had been at large for 4 years, since 1973, when he escaped the Mays County Jail, of which he was an inmate for the crime of kidnapping and the subsequent rape of 2 pregnant women, as well as 4 counts of burglary. Although there is no direct evidence linking Hart to the crime, the sheriff in town, Weaver, said that he believed Hart was 1,000% guilty, but did not elaborate as to why. Several days after the murders, some hunters discovered a cave which appeared inhabited. They found a number of items in the cave, including women's glasses, pages from the Tulsa newspaper, a section of which had been found in the battery compartment of the flashlight, possibly to keep the batteries from rattling around, and photographs that Hart himself had developed while working in the photo lab at the Granite Reformatory. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue found in the cave was a note written on the wall which read 77-6-17, the real killer was here, bye-bye fools. Nearly 1 year after the crime, Hart was picked up at the home of a Cherokee man by the name of Pigeon and arrested on suspicion of the brutal assault and murders. Investigators searched the residence of Pigeon, but did not find anything relating to the case. They searched again, and this time they found items that the camp counselor claimed had gone missing before camp began. Pigeon claimed these items were never there and had been planted in his house. There was also speculation that Sheriff Weaver actually had the photos, which belonged to Hart, in his desk at the Mays County Jail and planted them in the cave, therefore tying Hart to the cave. Many family and area residents believed Hart was innocent. They raised money for his defense and supported him during his trial. A key piece of evidence was the long black hair found on one of the victims, which a state crime analyst said that although it matched Hart's hair, you could not identify a person based on hair alone at that time in 1977. The fingerprint on the flashlight lens did not match that of Hart. The bloody footprint in the tent was also too small to be of Hart's. A jury eventually found him acquitted of all charges, and when they pronounced that verdict, Hart began openly sobbing with relief. He maintained his innocence. The not guilty verdict notwithstanding, Hart still had a 306-year state prison sentence for the crimes he was originally convicted of, as well as the successful prison escape. However, after just 2 months back in jail, Hart had a massive heart attack and died instantly at age 35. The parents of Doris Denise and Lori Farmer, but not those of Michelle, sued the Magic Empire Council of Girl Scouts for $5 million, citing negligence on the part of the adults in charge and organization administrators. They included complaints regarding the threatening note left in the donut box 2 months prior to the tragedy, as well as lack of adequate supervision of the campers and lack of follow-up in regards to the noises that night. One of the campers who heard sounds in the night, though it is unclear who, says she told a camp counselor of these screams, but was told to ignore them. In their defense, the camp counselor explained that first nights at camp are often filled with girls gleefully screeching and getting to know one another. In 2008, bodily fluids from inside the tent were put forward for DNA testing with more advanced forensic technology analysis. No answers came from this, however, due to the deterioration of the samples being too great. No other viable suspect ever surfaced, and the case remains open and unsolved to this day. If you found this story as haunting and mysterious as we did, give this video a like and subscribe to Criminologist for more deep dives into the darkest corners of unsolved crimes. Let us know in the comments what you think about this case. Was Hart guilty, or is the real killer still out there? Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more spine-tingling cases.